Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. It's a new aeon. William S. Burroughs once wrote that 5 steps are necessary to achieve independence from alien domination and to consolidate revolutionary gains. The first of these steps is to proclaim a new era and set up a new calendar. In this talk, I will discuss the benefits and the philosophical basis for the calendar of Thelema, along with a basic explanation of how our calendar works. A calendar is not mentioned in the Book of the Law, but our holidays are described as follows. Let the rituals be rightly performed with joy and beauty. There are rituals of the elements and feasts of the times. A feast for the first night of the prophet and his bride. A feast for the 3 days of the writing of the Book of the Law. A feast for Tahuti and the child of the prophet. Secret, O prophet! A feast for the supreme ritual, and a feast for the equinox of the gods. A feast for fire, and a feast for water. A feast for life, and a greater feast for death. A feast every day in your hearts in the joy of my rapture. A feast every night unto new, and the pleasure of uttermost delight. And just to focus on one of these lines here, there are rituals of the elements and feasts of the times. Aleister Crowley felt that these rituals should be done on an elemental division of the year into the 4 seasons, which result from the Earth's position relative to the Sun. In his extenuation, or his new comment, Aleister Crowley explains that J.G. Fraser's Golden Bough contains appropriate elemental rituals in crude form. He particularly notes the suitability of the apparent entry of the Sun into the cardinal signs of the zodiac as a time to perform these elemental rites, for the purpose of generating a particular form of energy. Using Fraser's work as a resource has also led to the development of cross-quarter rituals, such as those by Tao Polyphilus. Check out the Speech in the Silence blog at speechinthesilence.com for links to these and other seasonal Thelemic rituals. These elemental rites are done for the purpose of generating a particular form of energy. Excess energy is then discharged and consumed on the occasions of the feasts of the times that I mentioned a few moments ago. In the commentary on the feasts of the times, Crowley uses Gregorian dates. For example, August 12th for the feast for the first night of the prophet and his bride. It's not clear to me exactly when he began using the Thelemic calendar. What is clear throughout his various writings is that Crowley wanted a calendar system that appropriately centered on Thelemic philosophy and esoteric symbolism. One of the central symbols in Thelema is that of the sun and moon conjoined. It is the mark of the beast, the phallus as masculine and feminine in unity. The sun and moon, and their positions relative to the earth, make the substance of our calendar. Now, just to clarify, while the symbols that we're talking about here in terms of the sun and the moon and their movement through the zodiac is taken from the point of view of the earth, that's not to say that our cosmology in Thelema is geocentric. Quite to the contrary, actually. Heliocentrism and recognizing that the sun is the center of our solar system is a very important part, in fact, of Thelema. And the facts of nature and science in particular are also given a very high importance in Thelema. So then why do we talk about, the sun moving through the sky and the sun moving through the zodiac and the moon moving through the zodiac? Well, it's simply the way that we see it from our perspective, and it's a measure. We could make any other measure we wanted. Our perception of the sun's movement is simply then used as a way of measuring our current position relative to the sun. So just to talk a little bit about some of the benefits of the Thelemic calendar. Where the Gregorian and Julian calendars were no more than crude attempts to approximate the solar year, the Thelemic calendar takes the solar year as its fundamental basis, simply and literally referring to the apparent position of the sun in our sky. The 12th part of the year, when the sun is in a given zodiacal sign, is based entirely on the position of the earth and its relationship to the sun. And the position of the moon then tells us how far along we are in that part of the year. Finally, we add a planetary weekday, which zeroes in on the exact day. Our calendar, unlike the Gregorian and Julian calendars, makes no attempt to constrain the progress of heavenly bodies to some abstract contrivance as a celestial bed of Procrustes. Instead, for us, the facts of nature dictate our calendar, and our record-keeping simply reflects the movement of the Earth around its star. So here are some more reasons to use the Thelemic calendar. First, the common Gregorian calendar inherently celebrates the birth of the mythical figure Jesus Christ by the way the years are numbered, while the Thelemic calendar celebrates the dawning of the new aeon and the subsequent reception of the Book of the Law. Also, the Thelemic calendar does not require leap years, leap seconds, or other obscure adjustments like the Gregorian calendar does. The notation of the Thelemic calendar simply reflects where the Earth is in its progress around the sun, and as such, it only needs to be changed if suddenly our trajectory changes. For example, if we were hit by a very large asteroid, our orbit would change, and we might have to change the way that our calendar is calculated. Another good reason, I think, to use the Thelemic calendar is that the new year happens for everyone at the same moment in time. Everyone at the same time can celebrate and count down to the new year. Learning and using the Thelemic calendar also helps to get a grasp of the basic mechanics of astrology and astronomy. And in terms of astrology and also all the correspondences on the Tree of Life, considering the symbolism of the placement of the sun and moon on any given day yields a rich field of meaning to correspond to experiences of the day. Also, since the Thelemic calendar is based on a division of the year, you can tune into the cycles of the Earth and its relationships with the sun and the moon. While the phases of the moon aren't used in our calendar, the lunar cycle is celebrated by Thelemites who use the mantra Gayatri to adore the moon on its first appearance, which some Thelemites interpret to mean the full moon, some interpret it to mean the first appearance of the waxing moon, and some interpret it to mean daily adoration of the moon when it rises and is visible. You can also celebrate your birthday with the Thelemic calendar on the actual solar return. Your Gregorian birthday is only an approximation of this. And finally, as I referred to in the beginning of this segment, using the Thelemic calendar begins to strip away some of the domination of the old aeon in our culture that currently defines our common calendar. And it helps to get to the root of all the calendars, the movement of the heavens. So the way that days and dates are recorded in the Thelemic calendar is by using the typical notation of astrology indicating the positions of the sun and moon in the tropical zodiac. The day of the week is often recorded in Latin, but can also be done using the planetary symbols. So you can indicate the degree that the sun and moon are in the sign if you want to be more precise. The more precisely their positions are noted, the more precisely you can know the date and time. The moon takes about 2.3 days to move through a zodiacal sign. So simply recording the signs that the sun and moon are in will describe a period of slightly more than 2 standard days. Recording the day of the week then narrows that date down to a single day. Now, concerning the years, the Thelemic calendar begins the new year on the equinox in Aries, spring equinox in the northern hemisphere. Our new year happens in the Gregorian calendar around March 20th or so. So the Gregorian calendar year is skewed a few months from ours. Thelemic years are often counted, and you see this notation in Aleister Crowley's diary entries, in a modular fashion by 22, usually in Roman numerals. So a given year is noted by a pair of numerals separated by a colon. For example, this is the year 418, written with Roman numerals as IV colon XVIII. On the next spring equinox, it will be the year 419, or IV colon XIX. So to explain how this notation works, to simplify the explanation, I'll be using a term dokosade, which simply means a period of 22 years. In the Thelemic calendar, as I mentioned, there are 2 numerals to indicate the year. Each number in this pair is a number that is between 0 and 21. And the 0 obviously is written in with an Arabic 0 because there is no 0 in Roman numerals. You can also write it without a colon if you're using Roman numerals. If you remove the colon, then you may have to just have the first number in uppercase and the second in lowercase, which is often how it's written with a colon as well. But you can also write it with Arabic numerals if you include the colon, or you can also just write the year in base 10 by saying, for example, the 106th year of the new Aeon, which is what the current year is. So going back to this pair of numbers, each one, as I mentioned, goes from 0 to 21. Now, it works just like, when you count from 1 to 10. You have a digit on the right that goes from 0 to 9, and then it goes back to 0, and then you add the 1 on the left to indicate 10, right? So that's a 10 modulus. So we're doing a 22 modulus, so you go 0 to 21, and then back to 0, and then the number on the left goes up 1, right? Okay, so in other words, the number on the left indicates the number of dokosades since the writing of the Book of the Law, and the number on the right indicates the number of years in the current dokosade. The number of the year is preceded by the term anno, which means year, and it may be followed by en. This is an abbreviation of the Latin phrase era novis, or new era. Dates in the common calendar, or Gregorian calendar, have EV added to the end, which stands for era vulgaris, or common era. So this 22 modulus corresponds to the number of trumps in the tarot, the number of paths on the tree of life, and letters in the Hebrew alphabet. Many Thelemites take note of this correspondence by explicitly associating the year and the dokosade to a tarot trump. For example, this new year could be referred to as the dokosade of the emperor and the year of the moon, while last year was the dokosade of the emperor and the year of the star. Some astrologers have asked about whether the Thelemic calendar uses a tropical or sidereal zodiac. The Thelemic calendar uses the tropical zodiac, which simply attributes the zodiacal signs to an even 12-fold division of the sun's apparent journey through the sky. The tropical zodiac does not take the positions of the so-called fixed stars into account. Over the millennia, the star signs move through the sky and their positions change very gradually. The tropical zodiac, however, doesn't take any note of this. The tropical zodiac is simply determined by the relationship of the Earth to the Sun, only that. The sidereal zodiac, which does look at the fixed stars and the actual constellations, gives rise to the precession of equinoxes. Over great periods of time, a couple thousand years, the star signs move due to the wobble in the Earth's rotation about its own axis. So the spring equinox takes place in a new star sign every couple thousand years. It's called precession because the star signs move in a sense backwards compared to the apparent movement of the sun through them. So where normally in the course of a couple months the sun appears to travel from Aquarius to Aries, over the course of a couple thousand years, the sun at spring equinox will travel from Aries to Aquarius, hence the phrase Age of Aquarius, and some have drawn a correlation between the precession of equinoxes and the Thelemic conception of aeons. But it's really a matter of utility to determine which method we choose to represent the zodiac. In the tropical method, we're dividing the Earth's axial oscillation into 12 parts, defining the spring equinox as 0 degrees Aries. In the other, sidereal system, we're defining the signs based on the positions of the stars. The tropical zodiac is simpler and more practical for tracking annual and seasonal change. It also conforms to Crowley's comment in Book 777, where he writes, quote, Aries is scarlet, being the house of Mars and the sign of the spring equinox, where occurs the fiery outburst of the new year. Now, concerning the future of the Thelemic calendar, some have wondered what term we can use to describe a period of 22 dokosades. There is a possible term we could use for the period of 22 dokosades, and that is dokosa zenzakade. The roots of this word break down to basically 22 squared. So given the modular counting of our years, notation after the first dokosa zenzakade would require us to add a third column on the left of the docosahedra column. One popular suggestion for this notation has been to use the Hebrew letters in this third column, with Aleph being 0, Beth 1, etc. Adopting this would mean that our current year is actually Aleph 418. But it's not necessary to include the Aleph in our normal discourse, just as in the common calendar we often write '10 rather than 2010 EV, but also especially since in this case it's functionally a leading 0 and can be left off. I hope that this explanation of the Thelemic calendar has been helpful to any listeners who may have had some difficulty in deciphering the notation or understanding its utility. Be sure to check out the podcast blog at speechinthesilence.com for more information and links. Love is the law, love under will.
Thank you to Joseph Thebus for that concise